In every generation, there comes a moment when a single spark becomes something greater, a spark that becomes a light carried by those who believe in freedom, who believe in opportunity, who believe that the Bahamas can be stronger than ever before, driven by courage, powered by the people, guided by a vision for a brighter tomorrow, and through it all, the flame still burns. The Free National Movement.
Join us now during our Manifesto Explained Town Hall as the leader of the Free National Movement breaks down the FNM's plan for this country 5 years and beyond.
Junkanoo belongs to all of us, not one political party, not one group of Bahamians. For years, we've enjoyed this incredible festival. But one of the most unfortunate things about it has been seasonal. And the truth is that we have the potential to do Junkanoo all year long. Junkanoo has the ability to not only create jobs, but to create Bahamian ownership. And that's our focus, to make sure that those Bahamians, those creatives who are part of this incredible expression of Bahamian culture, that they can earn a living year-round. But equally important to earning a living is that they could be themselves. Because the truth is, Junkanoo is a part of our culture, but it's a part of us. One way that we express ourselves to each other and ultimately to the world. And so the question is, what sort of things can we do as a people that can transform what we have taken for granted and not develop to the extent that we have the ability to do so? And so we know that there are a wide range of things that as a people we can do. And so I want to run through a list of those things. It's not an exhaustive list. I'll start with 9 items. And I know for each of you that's out there, you can think of other things we can do to popularize, to monetize, to make international this thing we love so much. So let me just take you through an exciting list of things that a Free National Movement government will lead the charge, working in conjunction with the real stars of the show, the Junkanooers. I had the honor of serving as the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture for 1 year. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work with these incredible artists. But I should go back a little bit and tell you that I once rushed with the Saxons. I played the bass drum, and I almost died. I didn't know you had to be in shape. And I apologized to every Junkanooer who I misjudged, because I didn't understand why you had that little bottle on the parade. But I understand now. Sometimes you need a little spirit to carry those drums and carry those big costumes. But one of the things that assisted me for all the years I've attended Junkanoo, for all the times I've listened, not just to the iconic Junkanooers, but to each male and female who grew up in the culture, is that there's a need for the private sector, the government, and the creative community to work together, and we could do transformative things. And so one of the things we are committed to doing is something we started, and of course work with every B and A group to accomplish. One was, we believe that every Junkanoo group ought to have property of its own. And for that reason, we asked groups to, again, identify a parcel of land that you're interested in, because many of them are already on properties and the potential for buying it is real. Or secondly, the government can identify land that we own and allocate it to various groups. And so we began that process. The paperwork commenced. We believe we have to complete that process. In so doing, you now give Junkanoo groups a base to build, to expand. And what will begin with one property can then mushroom into much more. Let's look at some of the groups that have already made this happen. One of my favorites is, Barabbas. Again, taking a relatively small piece of property and building something special, helping to groom young men and women, taking our culture international from a small space. Can you imagine what else could be done if we did more to empower more groups? The second thing is, we began a program, and I worked with several architects. One in particular did an incredible job, Leslie Johnson, to design multi-purpose Junkanoo shacks. So when we think shacks, often it's the space where you go to create costumes. But that's only one part of the story, or to practice. The multi-purpose Junkanoo shacks that we envisioned included a cafeteria to not only serve those that work in the shacks, but even the surrounding community. In fact, a business unit in and of itself within this broader shacks. Secondly, a performance space. It could be 50 seats, 75, 150, depending on the square footage of the multi-purpose Junkanoo shack. Thirdly, a space where Junkanooers create. One group may decide we're building cowbells, another drums, others we're creating costumes for not only our members but others who wish to purchase and go on bay or wherever. But a creation space. And then, of course, you have a double-deck space where you could build larger costumes with wonderful garage doors on either side for you to bring items in and out. But also a recording studio so that you could record the very music that you hear on bay. But not just that. There may be people in the community who want to record a speech, a song, whatever they desire, and at a reasonable fee so that that recording studio could be a self-sustaining space. Of course, you need office space. But you should also have sufficient walls on these multi-purpose Junkanoo shacks that you can have a Junkanoo art exhibition in the space. A multi-purpose Junkanoo shack can be transformative for the community in which it is built. Cabinet passed the paper. We allocated $5 million to it. Unfortunately, during our term in office, they weren't built, and when we were kicked out of office, no one built any. But we will commence in the first year when we return to government. We will commence again the pilot project with 2 of those shacks, one in New Providence and one in Grand Bahama, within the first year. Thirdly, there is a need for us to once and for all begin the Junkanoo Festival. We've been talking about it literally for decades. We've traveled around the world, most times on the people's dime. We've seen festivals surrounding Carnival and other cultural expressions for different countries. The question is, why haven't we done it? A part of it is just not having the will to work with each other and decide on a final format and then execute. When I first appointed the persons who now serve as leaders of the NJC, their responsibility was to make sure that we monetize Junkanoo. They were going to pay close attention to how we could begin to bring into the Bahamas the factories required to manufacture the items we use every year in creating costumes. That was their remit to a large extent. Again, we have an opportunity to create ownership for Bahamian entrepreneurs in the creative space, as well as jobs. And I believe that if we were to dedicate resources, we are already committed to doubling the amount of money that we've made available to entrepreneurs. We did $50 million when last in government. We intend to double that amount and also include loans as a part of the $100 million made available to micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. And the creative industry, which is a potentially lucrative area for Bahamians, they will get their fair share of these resources. This December, we will ensure that the first major Junkanoo Festival is fully organized. drumming competition, dance, free dance competition. In fact, at the Central Bank, a Junkanoo art exhibition. We can do a wide range of things over the course of a 2-week period. And so that's going to be exciting for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, but for the many tourists who will come to celebrate with us. So as we go into question and answer, I just want to wrap up by saying, one of the things that impressed me most about the power of Junkanoo is the fact that there are persons who you may consider them unmotivated when you see them on their traditional 9 to 5. But when you see them on Bay Street, moving as if they are conch with no bone, their face lit up, you realize there are no unmotivated people. People are just motivated in different areas. And so for someone who loves the culture that much, enjoys Junkanoo that much, I think it was Molefe Asante, an African-American scholar, who says, when you hear the drum beat, in a sense, it's like the psychic stain of Africa in our spirit. When you see that, that should make us want to work harder to make sure that that's something that person can do every single day of their life if they decide to. That's why we have to monetize it. That's why we have to create opportunities for them, so that they're not stuck in a job thinking about the next time they could be on Bay Street or in Mason's Addition or in Fort Charlotte. Our people deserve an opportunity to do the things they love and are passionate about. Our job as government is to help them monetize it so that they can live their passion every day. But the other thing is, and this is what I love about the veterans of Junkanoo. The veterans of Junkanoo, the iconic leaders who are not fully appreciated in this country, they recognize that Junkanoo is a national development tool. That a young man who ordinarily strikes fear in people's heart governs himself when he's in the presence of his leaders. In other words, they are his mentors in that moment. And if they had an opportunity year-round to pour into his or her life, imagine the transformation that could be made in so many people's lives. Because in that period leading up to Junkanoo, they are focused. Whatever they were into prior to that, no, they are focused on making sure they could go to Bay Street for bragging rights. And so Junkanoo is a pathway to socializing many of our young people. It's a national development tool to build basic attributes of discipline, of being honest to the craft, of being focused on the assignment, of thinking long-term and how to work within a team concept. So many lessons Junkanoo teach us. And then, of course, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if the brilliance that is placed on Bay Street, we could make sure that that brilliance is in the very neighborhoods that our Junkanooers come from. And that's why our intention is to transform the over-the-hill community, from the top of the hill, Fort Finn Castle, to Robinson Road, from Chippenham all the way to Village Road. Because we believe if we could put beauty and brilliance on Bay Street, we could transform every dilapidated house. We could fix every wall that is broken. We could repair every step from the top of Fort Finn Castle down into Mason's Addition. We could remove every derelict vehicle. We could clear properties and transform them into green spaces and recreational spaces and creation spaces. We have the ability to do it. But we have to believe in our people and trust their genius. And as government, realize all we are facilitators to remove the obstacle out of the way of Bahamians who are minded to work hard and smart, and to provide any assistance we can so that they can live their dream. That's our commitment. And that's why we're committed to the orange economy in general and Junkanoo in particular. God bless you. So, now the hard part. hearing from you and answering your question.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
My name is Quentin Barabbas Woodside.
Good to hear you.
If these are things that are happen for the Junkanoos and our young people in our country and the Bahamian people, we need it. Listening to you, I think you probably, Ms. Smith, write that for you. Ms. Smith, get up, please. This is the manager of Junkanoo World.
Yes.
And everything you say, 90% what you said tonight, we are doing right now. This is Ms. Smith, the manager of Junkanoo World. Junkanoo World is located on top of the hill Horseshoe Drive by the Nassau Guardian. Feel free to drop in anytime and see exactly what we do there. We continue to build young lives. We just came back from, I'm just going to tell you a few. Over the seas, we played with the late Jimmy Buffett, cut an album with Jimmy Buffett in '94 called Fruitcakes on Tours. You can Google that. Played with, closed out the World Games in Edmonton, Canada. We played for Miami Marlins a few times, halftime show Miami Dolphins. 22nd year, we just came back from Savannah, Georgia, where we took over, it was 38 of us. At the end of the day, it was 83 of us in the street. And we watched Junior Junkanoo for the last 3 years, where we took young men from various schools, from high schools, to participate in St. Patrick's Day Parade for the last 3 years. Now, before that, we've been taking young men and women all over the world. But this 3 years, we decided to take the young ones, to encourage them, to show them the other side of Junkanoo, the economical side of Junkanoo. And by doing so, in Savannah, Georgia, we have the key for the city of Tybee Island. We are deputy sheriff of Chatham County. You can clap. We appreciate that. We are deputy sheriff of Chatham County. And believe it or not, we have our own holiday that the people of Tybee Island celebrate for the last 18 years of our life. Wow. Our own holiday. We are front page magazines right now. Front page magazines right now. And we do church services. And the people love us so much that our money is not good on Tybee Island. I'm going to say it again. The people love that Junkanoo culture so much that our money is not good. That means we eat free, we live free, they treat us good, and that's home away from home. And we need to protect that word Junkanoo because we see the welcoming center there. We are not making 1 cent from that. Junkanoos are not making 1 cent from that. We have, I'll say 7 million tourists come through this month. If we could charge $1, that's $7 million goes into youth sports and culture. Let's work on that. Let's work on that. All right? And not only the port here in New Providence, throughout the Bahamas, throughout Freeport, Eleuthera, Exuma. Let's work on continuing to build our country and preserve our culture. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not a Junkanoo, but as a Bahamian, I would consider myself a stakeholder in Junkanoo. So from a business perspective, I guess my question to you, Mr. Pintard, is I think in my view, growing up, seeing Junkanoo only twice a year, and then every so often you have the summit parades. I do think that there's value and benefit in having in the rarity of it. I think it's too rare. But how do we? Is it a concern of yours turning Junkanoo into something that is a bit oversaturated where it could potentially water down the economic impact, or you think that's not really a consideration?
Yeah, it's not a concern at all. Culture is defined as the things we do in the way that we do it that define who we are. So it's something we live every day. And so, again, I'm not at all concerned that it's going to be, let's say the performance is an item that people will grow tired of. You want it to be a staple of major events, either at the beginning or at the end, or as a half, as an intermission staple. That's powerful. In fact, Roosevelt Finlayson did something very interesting. He used Junkanoo as a part of his human resources training of staff, because Junkanoo teaches teamwork, strategic thinking, etc. You want it to saturate every aspect of national culture. And again, I remember when I used to do theatrical productions, sometimes we'd run a play 40 times. And then people, after the first 15, they'd be like, you doing this play again? And I'd be like, by the way, you going to work tomorrow? And they'd be like, yeah. I said, what about the day after? Oh, and the day after? Well, okay. In much the same way, you keep showing up and doing your thing. I keep showing up and doing my thing. And so I think Junkanoo fall in that same category. It should be something that is done year-round for those that wish to work in the culture, so no concern. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Pintard.
Good evening.
My name is Wendy Bodie. I'm currently the female lead drummer for the Valley Boys, #1, the only one. So my question to you is, in light of what we have experienced for the past 2.5 years with the interference of governance inside of our group, I want to know, in regards to the current bill that was passed, the authority bill, what would that entail, or would it still be a bill that is currently active that would interfere currently with what's going on with Junkanoo? Because we have been through so much in the last 2.5 years, as I would mention, and there's no need for government to be involved in what we do. Junkanoo is very near and dear to all of us.
Yes.
In regards to persons that partake in it. People never understand the time and effort we take. They only see the final product at the end of the day. But in regards to that, as I would mention with the bill, what would be the next steps? Or will it be dismantled? Or will there be a reinstatement of the JCNP that was formerly the management of Junkanoo, which entails all members and leaders of the Junkanoo groups themselves?
Okay. So you asked several questions. The first is, as I mentioned, we will amend the existing piece of legislation, and we will go back to all of the groups to ask for their input in it. I thought it was a mistake. In fact, the process was rushed. It was almost like a shotgun discussion with Junkanoo leaders here and in Grand Bahama, and we believe that that's inappropriate. So we support consultation, and we'll lead by example. So that's one aspect of it. The second is, politicians ought to be very careful not to interfere with Junkanoo. I remember I had and I think a couple of persons may be in here who participated in the conclave, the Junkanoo conclave that I'd spearheaded. Creatives and athletes, they could be brutal, but they have a right to fight for the space that is theirs and that they've been sacrificing without even sufficient government funding. But I found over the course of the conclave, we were able to work out concrete steps of what we will do next in Junkanoo. And so there's no need for political interference, particularly motivated by personal relationships that some government officials have, whether it's friend or blood with persons who are in the Junkanoo community. We should simply be there to facilitate the success of it, but not to bully the practitioners. I thought it was a bad idea to have the NJC, again, replace the JCNP in carrying out the functions that it was carrying out. And so that is something, again, we go back to the community, the Junkanoo community, and ask for their opinion on the correct structure that would allow them to effectively manage all things Junkanoo, not just the parade. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to correcting some of the mistakes that has been made. Rules were in place. So even the conflicts within individual groups, there are rules to help manage those challenges that groups may have. The government's job is not to come and reconfigure everything. It is to help groups to negotiate a better relationship with each other. And that's what we'd be interested in doing, being an honest broker, not picking any sides.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You tell us every day that this election is extremely personal to you. The light bill, the grocery bill, the cost of healthcare. Corruption is at its highest levels. The ease of doing business. Crime and the protection of our borders, so our children and grandchildren don't become strangers in their own country. So not voting is not an option. Your voice has been heard by the leaders of a new generation, and we will work for you. The Free National Movement will work for you. We are all working to get ahead, working to better ourselves, working to ensure a better life for the next generation, taking steps to a safe and prosperous future. Yet in our country, we face constant obstructions. This election, don't choose failure. Join the movement that will work for you each and every day, for your interest and for your future. A future that works for you with the Free National Movement.
Our theme is, we work for you, not the few. And nowhere is that more important than when we talk about a place that all of us call home. It is important that every Bahamian has an opportunity to own a piece of the rock. Because right now, many hard-working Bahamians are unable to afford a home that they could call their own. Some are working 2 jobs, paying rent on time, raising families, and still feel like home ownership is out of their reach. So tonight, let's have a candid, plain conversation about a different pathway. Our plan is to make sure that young couples who are trying to buy their first home are able to, or the single mother who's paying rent and have been paying rent for years, or the hardworking tenant who has never missed a payment, and yet they are unable to go to the next step, or the person with disability who see no pathway for them to own a piece of the rock. Our goal is to work with them. And so whether it's with a small or large contractor who's trying to make a living, we want to make sure that we create opportunities for more Bahamians, substantially more Bahamians, to own a piece of the rock. Home ownership should not just be the privilege of a few. And so we're committing to at least 5,000 new homes in the first 5 years. We say this is not just talk or promises. This is a commitment that we will deliver. Those persons who said, how come this goal is so massive? We want to know, how come your dream and aspiration is so small? We believe that we ought to open up opportunities where far more Bahamians have access to Crown land for affordable homes. That we are able, as a government, to partner with private sector to build at scale. We have the ability to cut the red tape so that approvals do not take forever. We can make this happen. And we want to start immediately upon taking office with a clear 5-year target. By the way, we know that the demand, according to government records, is for at least 12,000 families are trying to own a home. And so we're not going to delay. We're not going to debate this to death. We're going to get started working with the private sector, because the housing crisis is not coming, it's here. Across New Providence and the Family Islands, we are not building a Bahamas where opportunity is stuck in one place. We are building communities where young people can stay, families can grow, and local economies can thrive. Because home ownership is not just about property, it is about dignity, it is about stability and wealth building for the next generation. And right now, too many Bahamians feel locked out. That's why we say this government has been about public relations over the serious, hard work of governance, but not about delivering the dreams and aspirations of our people. And by the grace of God, working in tandem with all of you, we are going to change that. Yeah. Now, this is where we get smart and bold. We will invest $100 million of public funds, but we will not stop there. And we'll tell you exactly where we will invest it. We will use that to unlock hundreds of millions more from the private sector and investors. And so the question is how? By creating a public-private partnership housing investment fund, professionally managed, transparent, and built to deliver results. We will also provide instant VAT rebates for home construction, offer duty-free concessions for affordable rental that builders are in fact working on. We will speed up permits by bringing in private engineers. And here's what is of interest to me. I used to be a human resources consultant for Ministry of Works. And one of the things we recognize is that it takes entirely too long from the point that a plan gets into the ministry and it's finally approved. And then you start another process with the Ministry of Environment looking over the same plan. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could outsource some of those engineering functions to private engineers who can evaluate the plans, who will be protected with insurance, who will also be bonded in the event that they are, again, evaluating plans and where the implications of going, if they went wrong, is substantial, that they have resources to, again, give comfort to the government and give comfort to those persons who are building. And so, again, we intend to also help renters become owners. If you've been paying your rent faithfully but can't afford a down payment, we will back you with mortgage guarantees to help you cross that bridge. No gimmicks, no rent-to-own traps, real ownership. We live in a hurricane zone, so we will create a national home insurance program to pool risk, lower premiums, and make protection affordable. See, at the end of the day, we believe that what is good for the wealthy should be good for the rest of the people. The government may need to help create a pathway for you to have protection over your single largest investment. And so I want to share a personal story. I drove home yesterday and passed a number of homes that persons have not moved back into since Dorian. Some of the persons had become senior citizens, had done well during their lifetime, and didn't think they actually needed insurance the rest of the way, or in some cases, couldn't afford it. Dorian wiped out a lifelong commitment to building a home, not just for them, but for their children and grandchildren. We have to find a way as a country to assist persons in consistently obtaining insurance for their single largest investment. We will dedicate our time and effort to making this happen. My friends, this is bigger than bricks and mortar. This is about fairness. This is about opportunity. This is about building a Bahamas where hard work actually pays off. And so let me say this clearly. The difference between us and them is that they govern for the connected few and we work for the majority of our citizens. In fact, we are committed to working for all of our citizens. And when the results are not as you expected, I promise you, we'll work harder. We want to build a country where every Bahamian can say, this is my home. So I want to ask you all a couple of questions. 5,000 homes in 5 years sound like a pipe dream.
No.
Governments here have never delivered that scale. How will you possibly build 1,000 homes a year? Is this realistic for the Bahamas? Yes. In fact, I want to pause there for a moment. In fact, a good friend of mine who is committed to research called me one day and he said, I was looking at housing starts. You know, again, when people applied for permits, you know how many housing starts there was. And then he said, I was also looking at occupancies that were given. He said, do you know that we've exceeded that number before? I said, no, I wasn't aware of what year. I understood that maybe in 2 administrations it had happened. He says, yeah, and it doesn't matter if people began at different times and eventually finished one year. He said, Bahamians have the ability to do so. And then I thought about it for a moment, including about some folks on the other side. If you are building using systems, that is panels, the truth is, like an assembly line, you could build many homes. In fact, you could exceed the number that we have targeted. And the truth is, people are doing it in many countries around the world. The question is, why can't we? And so, the goal is ambitious, I accept that, but it's achievable. By leveraging partnerships and new building methods, we have a concrete plan with timelines, not just promises, to build at least 5,000 homes in 5 years by partnering with private developers and using efficient construction techniques like modular panels. We can mass produce homes faster and cheaper. Other small nations are doing this. Barbados targeted 10,000 homes in 5 years under its HOPE program, scaling up procurement and manpower. Go research it. And Jamaica National Housing Trust delivered over 43,000 homes in 4 years with innovative solutions like prefab container homes. We've pre-identified lands, designs, and partners so that within 6 months of taking office, we can break ground on hundreds of houses. In short, with proper planning, clear targets, and collaboration with private sector, 5,000 homes is a stretch. No, it is absolutely doable, reflecting the scale of the housing needs. Any questions or comments?
Housing is a topic that many Bahamians have struggled with over the years. You've mentioned that your government plans to build multifamily homes and condos. Are Bahamians really ready for that?
Excellent question. As you know, I live in Grand Bahama. There are many examples of exactly that type of home where persons are responsibly playing their part. In other words, they have to pay condominium association fees. They know how to use commonly shared space. And so, again, we have a culture on some islands more than others, but I believe the short answer is yes, we are ready for that. While we're going to the next person, let me just make this point because I think this is a critical point. We mentioned modular homes, and that is using panels, and there are many systems that allow you to build homes with prefabricated panels. That is only one category of the construction that we will engage in, and those can be townhouses, condominiums, standalone homes. And so when we talk about 5,000 homes, we're talking about 5,000 housing units. They could be, again, standalone townhouses or condos. They can be single story or they could be 4 stories with a walking path on the roof or a community garden. So that's one type. The second type is the traditional bill. Traditional bill in the Bahamas is generally 8-inch blocks. And so we will not disenfranchise those contractors who build in that traditional way. We are absolutely committed to continuing that. So a portion of the homes will no doubt continue to be built in the traditional way. The third method is what many Bahamians build. Sometimes over the hill, it's wooden structures. Sometimes it's the multi-million-dollar homes, whether it's through Lyford Key or in Albany or on one of the keys, where people are using aluminum or some other framing. It could even be wood, and they are building out with wood or some other material and using sidey panels or other finishes. So we will use multiple construction methods to, again, spur housing development.
Pintard, you mentioned Dorian earlier. I think many of us in the country have been, I guess scarred is a good word to use, traumatized in certain areas by Dorian and the effects of climate change and just changing weather patterns. In this 5,000 home plan, is there any consideration given to where certain homes should not be built, like certain areas that should not be built? I know sometimes that's a tricky subject, particularly in the family islands, where the government shouldn't get in the way of telling people where to build certain things. But I think that's a part of the responsibility of governance, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to know from your perspective, is that a part of the consideration?
It is. In fact, after Dorian, there was an amendment to the law. So governments ought to have a clear view, and that view ought to be anchored in legislation that restricts persons from being a danger to themselves. And so the short answer is yes, you have to build to code in terms of the strength of what you are building. It should be able to meet the specifications outlined by the law. But secondly, some locations are a debt trap. And so the government ought to intervene in those situations. And we have in the past, and we will in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, it's a combination of two questions. As a former loan officer, I do recall you saying that that these persons that are interested in getting mortgages from the bank you would provide them with guarantees. And as someone that has been in the banking system, I can tell you that the qualification process is very rigorous, and it can deter a lot of borrowers, especially when you look at what they're required to provide to qualify, particularly with like the total debt servicing ratios and stuff like that. Do you think that it is possible, saying to a bank like CIBC or RBC, here's a guarantee, bypass the 45% debt servicing ratio, we, the government, will assist this person in getting the home? How possible is that?
Right. So just by way of background, so I've built probably maybe 16 homes in the past, and I built and sold units. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are thousands of Bahamians who are qualified to own a home. And unfortunately, they are unable to afford the single largest part of that investment if you're living in New Providence, which sometimes is the property, right? So I thought we had a good program when we were last in government. I thought we moved a little too late to execute it. But government has the ability to acquire land or utilize land that's in an area that, again, and make that land available as a part of the housing package, that the young professionals who are buying into that housing package, they would ordinarily not be able to afford that piece of land. But because the government is, again, providing a social benefit to them, they immediately have a piece of land where they have equity in their house. Now, many of these young people already they will meet your debt service ratio that you're talking about. They already have resources. Some public servants, they're not encumbered or over leveraged, so they have resources. What they don't have is a parcel of land in an area that they're interested in. So we want to help them solve that particular problem. The second part that we are interested in solving is the down payment. The first property that I own, there was indemnity insurance. I didn't have to come up, let's say hypothetically, with the $15,000 or $20,000. I simply got insurance that allowed me to have a smaller payment to get started. Now, you could now take even that smaller payment and you could spread that over several months of payment so that you could have no money down, and you could do no money down in a number of ways, but one of those ways is really to take what is a small down payment that is required and spread it over the life of the loan, as long as this is a person or a family that has the ability to pay on a monthly basis. And there are many ways that we could go about determining that. So in that backlog of applicants, you hear often from Bahamians, we have the down payment. We make enough money. They give a house to whoever they want and not us. So we as a government should then try to figure out, how do we get those persons who have a down payment or who can pay every month even if they don't have a down payment, and get them into a home. And so during the course of this conversation, I'll point out several ways. One of them is, let us use land that we already own, treasury land or crown land, and shave tens of thousands of dollars off the investment for a family. Secondly, let us partner with private developers on the infrastructural costs, again, shaving costs off for the homeowner. So those are some of the things that I believe a government is able to do in order to bring the cost down. Now, the category you are asking about are those who probably do not qualify based on loans they already have. So we ought to work with them. Again, sometimes, let's say you're a fisherman. You may not regularly pass all your money through your account. So on the surface of it, it appears as if you're not consistently earning sufficient money to service a $1,200 or $1,500 monthly payment on your mortgage. So part of what we have to do is educate persons in terms of how to properly reflect their income and capacity to pay. Then for those who clearly just can't pay, how do you help them, again, to improve whatever choices they're making in their life so that the income that they are earning, less of it is going on frivolous things or things that are not going to end up with them owning a piece of the rock, and to redirect their priorities so that eventually they're in a position to own a piece of the rock. Now, there's one additional thing. I was stunned that people were buying homes at 800 square feet or less. Sometimes your starter home may be a full one-bedroom with a bathroom, a nice living area, etc. And that may be 600 square feet. Just as your starter home for a young, single professional with a small bachelor pad. And the truth is, your condominium is often that square footage. But they're also standalone homes. So while we say a person doesn't qualify, no, they may not qualify for the house me and my mom bought in Yellow Elder years ago, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, kitchen and front room. But you could qualify for something else. Home ownership, we believe, is critical for the next generation of young Bahamians. We believe that if we were to do this right, if we were to take the corruption out of the housing program, where government officials are providing, in some cases, supporters with a number of homes to build, even though the contractor has no experience in construction, if we were to eliminate that kind of approach, we increase the chance of success. Because making available building opportunities to persons who would extract their percentage and then find a suitable contractor to finish a home, again, is a recipe for disaster. We believe we ought to work with the private sector, not the government driving the home ownership agenda by spearheading the projects, but no, partnering with the private sector is what increases our chance. Our goal is to make it easier, that is, remove the impediments out of the way of housing developers, out of the way of potential homeowners. I mentioned already some of the ways to do that. One is to outsource a lot of the inspection, both on the commercial and the residential side. The second is, for persons who are building home subdivisions, you are required often to put up a bond. Maybe it's a $10 million bond. When you have constructed enough homes that covers $5 million, in my view, the government ought to release that developer from the bond, who can now take that additional money that was tied up and again further expand their business by again commencing another project or using the funds to accelerate the completion of that particular project. There are many creative ways in which government can work with the private sector in order to ensure success in the housing market. In the same way we use land and public-private partnership around infrastructural development to save costs for homeowners, we can do the same for those contractors who are building rental units, because the cost of rent is too high. But if we are incentivizing, partnering with, removing obstacles out of the way of persons who are building for rental purposes, we can help them bring down the cost. So we can also use government land for contractors or developers whose housing inventory is exclusively for rental. And we tie them into that arrangement so that they are able to build cost effectively, more cost effectively, in order to benefit persons who cannot afford the extremely high costs for rent. And so there are a number of social housing proposals that have been tried in various countries. It is about importing those methods that we have not yet used, adapting them to our environment, again, roping in the private sector in those partnerships so that we are able to be a benefit to Bahamians. Those that would own and those that would rent longer, in other words, until they are able to buy a home of their own. So the two major objectives in our housing initiative is to lower the cost of rental units, and then secondly, to increase the amount of persons who are able to buy homes. I want to pause there and take any questions that you have before making final comments on housing. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. The housing projects will occur throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, on all of the major islands. And here are some of the benefits that we have not really considered before. Our frontline soldiers, law enforcement or persons who are part of the uniform branch, nurses, social workers, persons with disabilities, they are categories of Bahamians we ought to pay special attention to. It does not mean that the rest of the public service or people who work for the industrial companies or any other occupation will not benefit from the housing project. But for a moment, I want you to think about the nurse that has decided to leave the Bahamas, not just because of the condition of the healthcare system, but because they make more money in Canada, in London, or in the US. Imagine now that we are able to assist that group of nurses in, again, buying a home in a subdivision that the government acquires the land, makes the land available as a part of the package for those nurses or educators or police officers, which drives down the costs that they would incur for land and the infrastructure for that land. The truth is, the retention bonus for the teacher, the retention bonus for the nurse is not extremely attractive. But if I'm able to help you shave tens of thousands of dollars off your single largest investment, even though you go to the US and you're able to earn far more money, after taxes, when you calculate what you may have saved by remaining home and yet being able to obtain a house, it may increase the chance of some of those persons not making that choice. There are various ways in which we can incentivize, in my view, teachers and social workers and nurses, those occupations where people or other countries are seeking to recruit them. I believe that the housing option is a significant incentive for teachers, a significant incentive for nurses. So we will partner with the Bahamas Union of Teachers and other labor groups who are already petitioning government, some without success, in partnering with them in providing homes for their membership. We are committed to working with all unions who have a plan of action. We are prepared to enter into a memorandum of understanding with them and assisting in ways we can. One certainly is using Treasury or Crown land. The second is partnering on helping to install the utilities in these subdivisions or the infrastructure required for these housing development. The final thing is this. Every major housing development ought to have a social benefit as a byproduct of that development. One, in some communities, we should have senior assisted living facilities. Increasingly, Bahamians are unable to both go to work and pay someone to maintain their parents. If we can work with the private sector in creating senior assisted facilities, we increase the chance of, one, taking care of our seniors in dignity in a cost-effective way, and at the same time assisting communities who need, again, a space where that can serve both as either as a daycare or can serve as a 24-hour senior assisted care facility. So that's one of the social benefits, I believe, in partnering, doing a public-private partnership where it is conditioned on, one of the conditions is that you, the developer, you're contributing along with government to certain types of facilities. One is a senior assisted care facility. The second facility is a community center. Every heads of agreement that we have ever signed in government has a social benefit for the community. Unfortunately, past governments have not been open and honest in reporting what they are getting out of these deals. The cruise port indicate that they are giving, I believe it's some 2% to BAIC. BAIC has never reported what, as far as I'm aware, what that money is being used for. Well, on the housing front, I believe that a second type of building that ought to emerge as a social benefit that the developer, along with government, will contribute to that community, are community centers. We ought to build community centers so that our people can have meeting space, our young people can be properly socialized, the apprenticeship program could be run through those community centers, and on and on. The third type of building is a daycare facility for persons who have disabilities. There are a scarcity of properties, of spaces, where somebody who's on the autism spectrum, who has now reached adulthood, it's a scarcity of spaces where they can go for a daycare facility. And so there is a need for us to pay attention to members of our community who have disabilities. And so I'm committed, we are committed to working with REACH and other agencies that cater to people with disability to make sure there are adequate spaces for learning and for daycare. And so those are three types of properties. There is a need for halfway houses, and of course, if you have multiple communities, there should be at least a halfway house, whether it's for somebody transitioning out of prison, whether it's for women and children who are leaving abusive situations. Our housing development should take into consideration those types of properties that's necessary for us to help people escape some challenging circumstances. And so I'll stop there, but I'm excited about the potential for us to, again, explode the number of homes that are available. We must take corruption out of the process. We must speed up the process of inspection. And we must, again, work with various financial institutions who will provide funding, not just the commercial banks, not just the mortgage corporation, which we will reform to take the corruption out of that system, but also other lending agencies we will partner with in order to make sure you're able to get a home, in many cases no money down, and again, your ability to pay over time for the square footage you could afford now as your starter home, and then you could graduate to the size home that some of you all who are here tonight have. So, So we'll stop there if there are no further questions or comments. The F&M knows every Bahamian deserves quality health care, shortage of supplies, inadequate facilities, and politicians who neglected it. Our plan is to make sure that we have a system that works for you and your family.
I'm a young man living in the Bahamas, and one of the concerns for me is this illegal immigration crisis. I'm voting for the Free National Movement to protect the sovereignty of our nation. Because as we know, what's presently going on in our nation is unacceptable. Another concern of mine is food security. For far too long, we have been reliant on other countries around the world, and we have a tropical climate. There's no reason for us not to grow our own crops here. As a result of the F&M's plan, I'm voting for my future. I am voting for my present, because the Free National Movement is working for me.
Every job I've had, I've learned something invaluable. When I was in construction, my brother made us look for the screws and the nails in the dirt, because your job could be held up if you ran out of nails. One of the sayings was, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. You are always on the clock. The F&M knows a strong economy means better jobs, more money in people's pocket, and a real comeback. And our team will work every day to make it happen. Any country that is serious about food security must reach its young people with a message that will excite them to get involved. All across the globe, including Europe, young people are not particularly excited about traditional agriculture. But when you introduce new technologies, new methods of farming, when they learn about the potential for revenue generation and ownership, the light bulbs goes off and they are excited about an area that is absolutely necessary for the growth and development of their community. I decided to study agriculture in grade 11 because I heard the premier of the Bahamas then, Linden, talk about self-sufficiency in agriculture. It took me many years to realize that our problem wasn't technical. It wasn't the inability of Bahamians to grow and compete. It wasn't the nature of the soil. It was the will of the people and the structure of the economy. And so today, I'm honored. Having served as Minister of Agriculture for 3.5 years, I'm honored to have an opportunity as Prime Minister to lead the charge in helping the Bahamas reduce our reliance on imports in a dramatic way. Today we import $1 billion with a B, $1 billion worth of fruits, vegetables, livestock, and ornamentals or flowers. $1 billion. And so the question is, how do you increase Bahamian production in order to do two things: create wealth and ownership, and two, create employment, sustainable employment? Well, one of the things we did when we were last in government is we conducted studies. We conducted studies to determine which products, agriculture products, we are able to produce cost effectively that would allow us to engage in something called import substitution, meaning that these are things we will grow so that we no longer need to import them. Our studies with the Food and Agriculture Organization, assisted by the Inter-American Development Bank, a consultant who worked with them, assisted by CADI, which is the agriculture arm of CARICOM, assisted by IECA, which is the agriculture arm of the Organization of American States, we narrowed the list of items we can cost-effectively produce to 77 items: fruits and vegetables and livestock. So the first pathway to success in agriculture is at least knowing what you can produce that allows you to compete. It makes no sense competing in a space where you could always buy it more cost effectively from overseas. An example, rice. You're not gonna be able to compete with India or China and any number of countries. The second thing is, after you know the items, the second thing you have to figure out is, how do you offer a measure of protection to local producers so that they are not faced with unfair practices by others who are much bigger than them, who are already giving their farmers lots of benefits to allow them to be more competitive than your farmers? And so we passed a policy when we were last in government. The policy said this: 40% of all foods consumed in the Bahamas or sold within the Bahamas must first come from a Bahamian producer before a permit is given to a food store, restaurant, or hotel to import it. 40%. So before you could buy certain varieties of onions and tomatoes and lettuce, etc., from overseas, you have to have at least purchased from Bahamian producers, up to 40%. Now, clearly, in the Bahamas, there's no product that we are producing 40% of the market, or 30, or 20, or 10, or 5. That's how bad it is. We can change this. The second part of that same policy was, we said if government is going to have the moral authority to force businesses or pressure businesses to buy from Bahamians, the government should lead by example. So 70% of every dollar the government spends on food should come from a Bahamian producer. And you ask, is that a lot of money? Yeah, millions. We do it in the Ministry of Education. We do it in national security, whether it's at the prison. I understand they may be spending $40,000 a month just on bread. We also do it in the Ministry of Health. And so, again, that policy alone guarantees you, any one of you that's interested in agriculture, anyone who's listening out there, you are guaranteed a market that if you could produce thousands and thousands of watermelons, you are guaranteed by law protection that before a watermelon can be imported, they must first come to you. As long as your price makes sense, the quality is good, you can consistently supply it, and then fourthly, you can supply it at the quantity required. You good. And so those are two important steps in terms of a policy decision: government purchase and private sector purchase. The third thing that is necessary if we're going to succeed as a people in agriculture, then we must have access to resources that allows us to, again, capitalize agriculture, meaning there's a need for equipment, there's a need for new technology, there's a need for input so that you could properly cultivate your property. Or you may be interested in shade houses and greenhouses, which is the new technology that attracts the young people I started talking about. Young people are more excited about agriculture because they can now do aquaponics, using water, using nutrition-rich water. Again, sometimes with fish in it, and the residue from whatever the waste products is from the fish nourishes the plant, and you can grow things. So you can do aquaponics. You can do hydroponics, using, again, nutrient-rich liquid that feeds plants, and you can do things like microgreens or the garnishing for your dishes or the seasonings for your dishes, which are generally 30-day crops. So, ka-ching, you can earn money on a regular basis, and you can do that in controlled, temperature-controlled environments. That has excited young people around the world. They love aquaponics. They love hydroponics. And so there are a whole host of products that you are now able to produce with new technology. Sometimes you could be into agriculture and you don't grow anything. You just provide the technology. You provide the small meteorological stations that allow farmers to, again, track the weather as it relates to when they need to, again, water or not water. It allows them to know, again, how much sunlight they're going to be exposed to and know how to cover certain sensitive crops that they have. So some young people, that's all they do. They're into irrigation system, providing watering systems for the plant that could be on your phone. You could control when you water your plants, whether you need to go out 5 hours from now or 10 hours. So new technologies have brought a new generation of farmers. You could go to work in your lab coat or your suit, or like some government ministers with your Prada, your Gucci, Oakleys. You know, you could do things like this. And so again, resources are required if we're going to succeed. And so one of the things we did is worked out ways in which we can raise money in order to make more resources available to young agri-entrepreneurs or farmers or fishers. And so again, we worked out how we can partner with banks who can invest in small agriculture enterprises and grow them into bigger enterprises. We learned how to, again, use government land and put it in a trust. Some people call it a land REIT, and you could raise money using government land as collateral, and you take that money that you raise and basically reinvest it in farming. So there's a host of ways in which we can attract resources or generate resources that we make available to agri-entrepreneurs. So that's a third thing that is critical. And so at the end of the day, we have to also make sure that government have experts that can assist farmers. And that's called extension services. And so under my administration, I will continue what we started. We hired the largest number of agricultural professionals who had bachelor's, master's degrees when we were last in government. No such thing happened over the last 4.5 years. We will increase the number of professionals who will be able to go out and empower farmers, empower fishers, by making sure they can take technical knowledge to educate farmers and fishers so that they can improve their business and they can grow their businesses, they can upscale. So it is important for extension services. Let me just give one practical example. Some administrations do not know that the agricultural land they allocated 5 years ago is no longer agricultural land, that there's a roadside garage on it or an apartment building has been built on it, because there have been no extension officers going into the community to service the entrepreneurs that we allocated land leases for agricultural purposes. And then, of course, sometimes people are growing items that there's no real demand for. There's a glut on the market. If everybody's growing watermelon or the same variety of onions, by the time you go and attempt to sell those items, you find that the price is entirely too low that you're going to fetch because everybody's doing the same thing. Extension officers educate farmers about what are the appropriate items that you should consider farming or growing, because here is the potential benefit that you are going to get from it. And so, again, these are the kinds of initiatives that we believe, had the government continued the initiatives that we started, then at the end of the day, we would have been more successful. One such program is a program we started with Atlantis. We asked the hotel to send us their 25 top items that their customers consume. And then we agreed over months of negotiations, we agreed on the following. One, we agreed on the price, that if farmers can provide this price point for these different items, they are prepared to buy. Here's the quantity that we normally need and the frequency with which we get these quantities. And so they had to agree that this is what we're going to try. These are the targets that we're going to try and meet. That then requires that, because no 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10 farmers are able to do that. But the more farmers who form a producer organization, or lack of a better term, a cooperative, you're in a better position to supply the big players who require large volumes. Atlantis went even further to indicate that they are prepared to provide 500 acres of land in Andros to help empower farmers. And so a part of what we will resume doing once we get back to government is reopening those discussions with the farmers so that they can form a producer organization, and they are in a position that if 10 of them had problems with their crop, but the other 40 or 50 is still functioning, they can still meet the quota as required, whether it's by food stores or restaurants or hotels such as Atlantis or Bahamas. And these are initiatives that will create millionaires in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. If they have a guaranteed market as long as your price makes sense and you can frequently provide at the quantities required these items to your potential buyers. We had a committee that met with purchasers from hotels, restaurants, and of course food stores. They are prepared to buy Bahamian. They just want to know The price makes sense, the quality of Bahamian products are generally good, and you can consistently supply the quantities that we need. And so I will resume those kinds of programs through our Minister of Agriculture. Another initiative we started that the government has abandoned, those of you that saw the invitation going out, they are now going to open what they call the Cultivation Center. The Cultivation Center, I'm confident, is a knockoff on a broader concept that we had introduced. We believe that one way to help agri-entrepreneurs, agricultural business persons succeed is to provide them with access to land. Lease arrangements is one. The second is crown grants. If somebody's been on their land for 25 years, like Big Bird in Abaco, we should give them the land. So they're on 25, give them the additional 25 that they've been utilizing. There are a number of agricultural professionals who deserve to have crown grants. We will move swiftly to make sure that they have access to the land. We wouldn't dangle it at the election time. We would make it available in and out of season so that they are able to succeed. And so one of the things that is we sought to put in place was what was called Agro-village. In other words, a village with different types of agricultural systems, all working symbiotically together. What does that mean? That means they have access to the same energy source, solarization, to the same water source for this village. So if you're doing microgreens, if you're doing solid crops, hydroponics, if you're doing aquaponics, if you're doing composting, which is really just taking, whether it's overripe or certain types of agriculture produce, and then converting it into fertilizer, etc. All of these different systems, we wanted a full village to be doing that. What are the purpose of the village? The village is a tutorial, all of them are tutorial farms. We are gathering data on every type of agriculture system. What's the value of the data? If I'm interested in upscaling my business, I need to know what worked on half an acre or a full acre, and how do I use that data for me to upscale on 5 acres or 10 acres or 15 acres. So again, that's one benefit. The second benefit of tutorial farms or agro-villages is it is a tourist attraction where persons are able to come to a welcome center where the restaurants in it, the produce that are in it, the livestock meat that's in it, all of it came out of the village. Imagine that for a moment. So just like when you went to Universal Studio or Epcot Center, you walked into the Welcome Center, you're able to buy items that reflect the characters that are out there in the rest of the Universal Studios, etc. Well, the Welcoming Center allows you to go to a restaurant where 90+% of the things are grown or developed in that village. The other thing you're able to do is to buy the agriculture technology that is used on the farm. The other thing you're able to do is have an audio-visual view of agriculture throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It's an attraction. It's a tourist attraction. So Bahamian students as well as tourists are visiting the agro-village. And this wonderful tutorial farm provides education. It provides, again, healthy produce, etc. We got the Volcani Institute out of Israel to agree to take 2 of the businesses and adopt them. And they would work with them for 2 years to make sure that they are global companies as a result of what they were doing. Some will be in greenhouses, some will be open cultivation. That project discontinued after we were released by the Bahamian people. And so we will resume this project, 6 agro-villages throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The difference now is we will do it on a larger scale, more than the 25 acres we were contemplating at the Gladstone Road project. We will do it on a larger scale. We will also transform BAMSI. BAMSI should not be in the cultivation business to produce produce that competes with other farmers. BAMSI should be in the business of, again, tutorial farms. They should be growing items, determining what is the best variety, what is the best quantity of inputs that allow crops to thrive or animals to thrive. The second thing we will do under BAMSI is we will invite universities and institutes from around the world to do what is the equivalent of the Silicon Valley, where they come and conduct research on a wide range of agricultural produce, fruits, vegetables, flowers, etc. Most universities in the States have a business relationship with the big food manufacturers. Imagine for a moment the Bahamas has the equivalent of the Silicon Valley in agriculture, where these institutes are all conducting studies here. We benefit on multiple levels. Their presence, additional students and faculty for BAMSI in agriculture, in life sciences, in marine sciences, that if there are inventions that are developed here, through the access benefit sharing legislation, we get residual benefits for whatever that invention becomes that is developed on our soil. So there are a host of benefits by having other institutions come to the Bahamas and set up shop on land. BAMSI has only 800 acres of land. So this business of us getting into the farming business where government can hide corruption, hide waste, we wish to bring that to an end, which is precisely why we believe we should privatize the packing houses, put it in the hands of farmers. Farmers do not need to use a packing house to bring their produce to be graded, to be sold to government at $11,000 is the cap. They can never make no real money going through that system. Furthermore, illegal migrants are on the same lands in Andros that they do not own. They are without status, yet they are more efficiently producing agriculture produce that they put on the side of the road that is collected, carried to Port-of-Ski, some sold there and others are sold in hotels. While the packing house system is fencing legitimate Bahamian farmers into providing produce to a packing house where they often spoil, and then some may make it to Nassau and not all make it into food stores. So we wish to help farmers go directly from farm to the food store, to the restaurant, to the hotel, not through a packing house. If it goes through the packing house, they should own it. They could convert it into a processing plant to create jams, jellies, puree, beverages out of their produce that they're not selling fresh. In other words, those institutions that private sector can run more efficiently, like packing housing, like the feed mill, like the Golden Yoke program, those are things that should be in private hands. So $40+ million later, the government just come with some eggs and we ensure they produce it to put on the shelf. No, let's put it in private hands. Our job is to facilitate your success. Remove the impediments out of your way, provide you with additional benefits, but we should not be in the agriculture business, in my view, as a government. So food security is very possible. In Marco City, we built a park and add a community garden to it in Mayfield Park. That's what we should be doing in parks throughout the Bahamas. Let's attach a community garden to it. Let's create community gardens. Let's take the thousands of acres where our lamp poles are, those easements, and plant cassava, sweet potato, cucumbers, those crops that do not require high maintenance, those tuber crops, Irish potato, cassava, sweet potatoes. Imagine miles of those that again, farmers are able to use to generate money, to also provide products for pantries so that people have access to healthy foods, whether it's in school, whether it's in senior assisted living facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm confident that we would be able to set off an agricultural revolution in this country with the right leadership, minus corruption, respecting programs that work and people that make a difference, which means you don't come in and throw people out just because they weren't hired under your government. You keep programs that work and you keep people that are effective, and we would be in a position to compete in agriculture and shave at least $400 million of our food bill on an annual basis. So we can move from $1 billion to quite possibly $600 million that we are spending on food. I believe we can do it if we pull together. And with those words, I rest my case. Food security is possible under an F&M government. I'll stop there. Any questions on food security before we wrap up? Any questions or comments on food security?
As a farmer coming from South Andros, Rennie Farms in particular, we would set up every Saturday at the Gladstone Road Farmers Market. The presence of Bamsi missing over a 3-year period has taken a toll on the farmers market. What is your take on reintroducing Bamsi at the farmers market every Saturday?
Again, I support Bamsi. However, I do not support Bamsi in the business of producing products. I think we should empower the farmers to produce more, but for Bamsi to provide technical advice based on the studies they conduct around the different products or livestock that they produce. But them coming themselves with products that they have produced, in my view, is not something I necessarily support. Even the pop-up markets, I thought the pop-up markets ought to be driven by private sector groups rather than the government buying from farmers. Because often when I was minister, I got in lots of fights with colleagues because they felt they should negotiate with farmers to buy products to sell. I said, no, our job is to help farmers make more money, not try to get them to reduce their price so we could buy and sell for them. So again, I'd like to see Bamsi be a university to educate the next generation of farmers and fishers, etc., but not in the cultivation business, save and accept to get data on how to help you be more effective as a farmer yourself.
Okay.
I'm a 26-year-old young woman living in the Bahamas, and I'm honestly ready for change. We've had a Brave administration, we've had an Ingram administration, we've had a Minnis administration time and time again, but we never had a Pintard administration. Being that I wasn't able to vote in the 2021 election, like my peers, I just wasn't into it. It was the same thing over and over, forgotten promises, or they giving us pennies and pinching off of us, expecting us to just take it and say, hey, let's vote them back in. It's time for a change, and I personally feel that Mr. Pintard is going to be that change.
The PLP, 5 years in power, and illegal immigrants have flooded our communities, putting excessive pressure on our schools, housing, and social services. And as they flood in, we fall behind. Philip Davis should be focused on us, not foreigners. The F&M has a plan to secure our borders, protecting Bahamians from illegal immigrants crowding our schools and flooding our hospitals and clinics, driving up healthcare costs. Because the F&M knows our job is to work for you, and not the few.
The F&M knows every Bahamian deserves quality health care, shortage of supplies, inadequate facilities, and politicians who neglected it. Our plan is to make sure that we have a system that works for you and your family. The Bahamian economy has been driven by our tourism sector. It has served us well, and so has financial services. But in the case of tourism, we are facing fierce competition. And quite frankly, despite the numbers that are being bragged about by policymakers, we are not benefiting from the sector in the way that we have been accustomed to. The majority of our 11 million plus tourists are cruise passengers who we appreciate and we value. But the truth is, their spend is often less than $200. It is substantially lower than what we earn from stopover visitors, which may be in the vicinity of $2,000. The truth is, less stopover visitors have been coming to the Bahamas over the last 15 years. And even among the millions of cruise passengers, we find that a smaller number of them are in fact leaving the ship and benefiting from Bahamian attractions. So the next strategic plan under our government is to grow the number of stopover visitors and to ensure that when cruise or stopover passengers come to the Bahamas, they are going to Bahamian attractions. Bahamian attractions that may also include our cultural offerings, our heritage offerings, because we have more to offer than just sand, sun, and sea. So the question is, with the competition we're facing in tourism, the attacks on our financial services sector, what's next for the Bahamian economy? We've committed to structural adjustments. We believe that there's a need for us to add to the leg under the table of tourism and the next leg under the table of financial services. We need other legs for stability and sustainability. And we believe that food security is but another leg that we can put under the Bahamian table to produce sufficient items in a targeted way, 77 items that we can cost effectively produce and compete, shaving hundreds of millions of dollars off our food bill. And here's how, in a general sense, we would accomplish that. The tourists that come to the Bahamas require the very things that we are not yet producing. So for every dollar we earn from tourism, 80+ cents of that dollar goes back out to buy the range of things those tourists and us as a people eat or consume or use. And so, again, agricultural development will necessarily mean that we slow down and stop in some areas the amount of money earned from tourism that goes out of the country, because it gets to stay in the country because we're buying from ourselves. That's a part of what we intend to do. That's what diversification will look like under our government. That if not a single additional tourist come, but we're able to save some of the money they actually spend with us, we will do better. Secondly, the orange economy. Our creativity is and should be as attractive as sand, sun, and sea. So if tourists are coming here and enjoying our music and taking back with them a CD, or nowadays they just go online to some platform and download our song, our artists benefit. If they stop and for 45 minutes they have lunch with Bahamian cuisine, but they're enjoying Bahamian culture. Maybe it's in the shadow of the fort, Montague, or Fort Charlotte. Or maybe it's near the 66 steps, the Queen's Staircase, and it's maybe under the tower. But they are enjoying the orange economy. Or they are visiting the museum or sports pavilion where they can learn about iconic Bahamian athletes. They are also a part of the orange economy. Not just the arts, but athletics, new media. Again, we will be earning tremendous amount of money that will put another leg under the table, the orange economy. The Bahamas may not compete with blockbuster movies. The incentives we provide for filmmakers are often much less than what other jurisdictions can offer. But what we can do is we can compete in terms of creating content for the small screen, for Hallmark, for Netflix, for Cinemax, for HBO. We could build a culture that when filmmakers come here, we have sufficient riggers, sufficient persons who service different aspects of the filmmaking industry. The Bahamas can develop that reputation. We can create a marine studio so that people can create, or companies can create movies on the foreshore, near shore, or in the water, because we have 100,000 square miles of it. We can compete on the small screen. And we have these iconic, folkloric characters. So when we met a few years ago with the developer of Games of Thrones, he talked about these mythical figures that are part of Bahamian storytelling and how they could be the basis for creating movies and short and long and feature films, just using these characters. Chichani, even the Bahamian pot cake, not the one who owes all the money. And so again, we have opportunities, again, in the orange economy to export talent. Imagine Bahamian dancers, singers, performers, actors, playwrights, poets, traveling around the world, bringing back foreign currency as a result of sharing Bahamian genius overseas. That will make a very strong, again, pillar under our economy. And so we believe food security, we believe the arts in general have the potential to generate tremendous wealth, to generate tremendous job opportunities for thousands of Bahamians who otherwise would be struggling. And under a Free National Movement government, we intend to explode those opportunities for not just Bahamians who are here, but Bahamians who live abroad, who share our culture and create an appetite for people coming to visit from the country that gave birth to them. So God bless you. I pray that you have a wonderful, wonderful evening.